I had had enough.
Well, you drove out there into the middle of nowhere and had some sort of loud verbal display challenging ET in general out in the middle of nowhere?
That's what I was doing. I actually had a pistol in my hand at the time. I was really ticked off. When I was having this fit, I was waving the gun in the air, okay, and I had this fit. And at this moment, I said, okay.
He was a Louisiana man named Montaldo. Folks around called him Six Gun Joe. Worked with ICAR, don't you know? Investigating UFOs. Out for a drive with a gal one night, they stopped to check out the reporting site. When an alien lit right there on the ground, he commenced to throwing his weight around. Now, old Six Gun didn't take too kindly to that kind of thing, especially without Vaseline or anything like that, seriously. Well, Six Gun looked that critter right in the eye and said, "Any last wish before you die?" Yo, reached for his gun, quick as a twitch, and said, "Fill your claw, you son of a bitch." Now a legend spread across the land about this pistol-waving man. But if you're from space or from Earth below, you don't give no lip to Six Gun Joe.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
I had had enough.
Well, you drove out there into the middle of nowhere. Like a real person.
Portal. Paranormal Talk Radio. The Door.
Background information about you, maybe why you're involved in this, and we'll start from there.
Well, I was born in Belgium, in Brussels, in 1956, and soon after my parents relocated in Canada, and basically I've been living in Canada ever since. My experience started basically when I was around 5 years old, and then later on in life, when my children were born, things began happening with them when they were 5 and 6 years old. So from what I've read and what's been happening with us, we're finding that it's basically something that will go from generation to generation, and most of the time will begin very early in age. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think I never decided to get involved in this or thought, geez, one day I'm going to do this. It's just things were happening for me since childhood, and then when I got older, I started keeping a diary of things that were going on and stuff. And at the time, like I'm 51, but I never really clued in or you know, realized what was going on till I was in my mid-30s, and that's when kind of all hell broke loose and things such strange, unusual, and scary things were happening with my children, like waking up with burn marks on their bodies and holes, in their backs and stuff. And just, having doctors keep saying, well, we don't know what's wrong, we don't know how this happened, we've never seen anything like this. That's when I realized that something was really wrong. And then, of course, the UFO sightings became more and more intense, bigger and bigger ships. And it wasn't just us who were seeing them. We'd have friends over or be out somewhere. So there were many eyewitnesses to things that were going on.
Well,
go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, that's okay. That's okay. Remember, anytime you're on the show, you take as much time as you need, because when I get to talking, it's hard to shut me up. So always take as much time as you need. Well, no, because I wanted to cue off a few things for the listening audience, because I don't know if you're familiar with me, because I do research for the International Community for Alien Research, which is now the largest UFO abduction organization on the planet. I'm international director. We've categorized more than 7,000 abduction cases. That's what we pride ourselves on, is actually doing the real homework on contact. It's one of the reasons this show brings on, is we try to bring on at least a quarter of the year is dedicated strictly to contactees and contactee research, or abductees, or experiences, because I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings here with these terms, but it's one of the things we do. And when you said about age 5, that's common for the first memories of abduction to start. Abductions actually started in your mother's stomach long before you were even born. But now, age in the 30s is late 20s, mid 30s, somewhere up in there is what we like to call the awakening stage, when a lot of contactees come to the realization that they're an abductee or a contactee. A lot of them is for the same reasons you said, because they realize their kids are having experiences either similar to the ones they remember as a child or more intrusive. And it tends to trigger the parent's mind. Sometimes it's two parents. Now, let me ask you this. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but in some cases, I know one of the parents is a contactee. In some cases, both are. In your case, is it you or your husband or both? I mean, I know it's you, but is it your husband too, or both?
No, I've been single for many years, but my ex-husband never had experienced anything at all. And in fact, this UFO thing, for lack of a better word, really created a lot of problems in our marriage.
Yeah. Well, no, that's common for non-contactees. In a relationship where one's a contactee and one's not, 98% of the time, I'd say it ends up in divorce.
Yeah.
And I can understand why. I mean, if you don't have any interest in this, or you're not having experience, you're looking at your partner like, you have lost your mind.
Yeah.
I do truly understand it, but I just wish more people would be more open-minded, especially when it comes to love. They should be a little bit more willing, for even.
I agree.
But that's neither here nor there, and I don't know if there's anything we can do about it now. What's the very first experience you remember? I mean that you actually remember. Let's start off with this first. Was it a good experience, a bad experience, or something maybe in the middle?
Well, unfortunately, in our case, all of our experiences have been
not nice ones,
of the negative kind,
not
very positive.
Yeah.
My very first memory, I was between 4 and 5. I believe I was 5 years old, and I was just terrified of bedtime, and I would always ask my parents to check for monsters under my bed, in my closets. Then I would ask for the light to be left on. I mean, it was just horrible trying to go to bed at night. And what started happening is I remember a bright bluish white light that would come through my bedroom window. And now my bedroom window was at the second floor up, and there were no stairs or anything leading up to that window. And then, all of a sudden, after this light appeared, there would be this very scary face that would show up in the window, seem to come through my window and wall, and then this figure would start coming up to me, and I would just pull the blankets over my head. And the next day, I would always say to my parents, this very scary face came into my window again last night, and it was kind of, I don't know, it's really strange. It was as if my parents were in another world or something. And my father would usually turn around and say, oh, it's probably just a wildcat from the forest out back. And I would always come back with, but Daddy, the kitty had no ears. This thing had no fur, no ears. I mean, it had big black eyes. I would try and describe it. And not only that, but I was on the second floor, so how could a cat have reached, the windowsill? So there were strange things like that really started when I was 5, and then it was different things like, we'd be waking up in the middle of the night, and different things would be going off in our bedroom, like some of our toys and stuff. It would just like I remember having. I know this sounds stupid, but I remember having this little monkey with thimbles. And, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and this bright bluish white light be coming through the window, and all of a sudden, all our toys that were different, the monkey would start clapping, and then I had this clown, and he turned his nose, and it would play music, and then this music would start by itself, and things like that. It was just like very creepy and very scary. And unfortunately, in those days, the parents would look at you, you're having a nightmare, or it's the cat in the forest, or there's always some kind of excuse like that. So as far as support goes, or somebody understanding what you were talking about, forget it. You were basically on your own.
Yeah, well, it's hard. I mean, first off, as kids, the aliens have a tendency to, I guess, wash over everything. So it's really hard to, and then you have your childhood, your imagination as a child. So it kind of makes it really hard to understand what anyone's talking about there. Even though now, because of the research we've done, we understand that most of the experiences are quite similar, and most cases at that age, it's not really a bad contact. A lot of kids even call them their friends, but for some reason or another, starting around puberty and at least to age 30, most of those contacts are, I don't want to say 90%. I feel like 90%. I couldn't back that up, but I'd have to say at least 90% of them until age 30 are pretty nasty style contacts. And then they tend to change, but that's not always true. And it's something I tried to explain to some of the other researchers in ufology. There's always exceptions to the rules. And we do learn that things happen in order now, and we do understand that from the childhood through the puberty into adulthood and styles of contact and change and things like that. We do understand that, but, each individual, as an individual, each one is different. So the aliens take it according to that. And it also has a lot to do with what their final plan is for you. So that has a lot to do with it. And because sometimes
I know, I understand what you mean, and it's funny because my children will say to me, "Well, for goodness sakes, you're 51 years old, Mom. What more could they want from you?"
Yeah, that's when they want you the most.
They've been collecting from us for years, but I mean, to still be around at this age, what do they want? What are they doing?
Well, at your age, you're way more useful to them. You're probably way more stable, both financially and mentally, than you ever were in your life. Well, that's true. I mean,
I'm not sure about that.
Well, I know, but you think about your 20s. I mean, most people don't realize it, but 20s are kind of, especially if you're a contact, you're already dealing with coming into womanhood or manhood and getting into the real world. And on top of all of that, you have aliens picking you up. It's not the most stable period in anyone's life.
No, that's true. It wasn't.
So it makes it hard. And and I don't know if this is true for you, but a lot of contactees have addiction problems. And it could be anything. People hear me say the word addiction, they instantly assume drugs or alcohol, and sometimes that's what it is, but they have a lot of other problems. And I think sometimes it's to compensate or to cover what they're feeling about their contact. They use it as to null them, I guess, to numb it out, for a lack of a better thing. And that makes it hard there.
I never used drugs. I've never done drugs in my life or drank.
That's a good thing.
But my addiction was I either starved myself, couldn't eat, and had major panic attacks, or I would find myself overeating. So I would go from one extreme to the next.
To the other. Yeah.
But I mean, you can understand. We lost almost all our friends. We moved, trying to outrun these things.
Yeah.
So thinking we could hide or get away from them, which meant that quite often we were away from our family. And even when we were close, we didn't dare talk to grandparents and stuff because they would have thought we were crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So, then there was a lot. You lose a lot. You don't gain anything by being in this club. Trust me. It's just, some people say, well, I wish I had those experiences. And I say, please, watch what you wish for. You may just get it.
Well, that's one of the first questions I ask people when they come to us and say, well, I want to remember more. I said, do you really? Are you really prepared for what you're going to find out? Because, a lot of people assume that ET is all sweet and kind of nice. And there are a lot of good contact cases. I'm not going to Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be as many of them as there are of the other kind, but there are still there. So we know not everyone is having bad experiences, but it seems like the majority of them are, at least until they get much older. And even then, some of them are still having bad experiences. Now, a lot of them, like I said, in their 30s and 40s, a lot of them start to work with the aliens. So their experiences tend to change a lot more. They tend to lay off of them in a lot of areas, and the abductions even start to slow down quite a lot. But they have goals for these people. Jim Sparks and Suzanne Hansen, who are both abductees, say that they're communicators. That's their job for the aliens, is to communicate the experience and what they've learned. Which, they're not the first ones I've heard say that. And it does seem, for a lack of a better way of saying this, that every contactee has a role to play. It's just not all of them are good roles. And as far as I can see, there's no way to stop it. I mean, have you found a way to stop it, or?
No. I've tried praying. I've tried, to tell you how far I went, I remember in my 30s, I think it was mid-30s, somebody had said to me, why don't you try this? And, of course, I did, and that was to take a felt pen and actually write something on my leg, ask them a question, and then, tell them to give me some kind of hint that it wasn't a dream, that it was really them, like to do something to the leg or to take it off or whatever. I can't even remember what it was at this point. But no matter what I tried, there was never an answer of why they were there, why me, things like that. Never.
Yeah, well, no, and now, going through your teenage years, you remember anything there? I know for some contactees they do, and some, well, most of them really don't. They know there was an ominous sense about it, but they really don't remember anything. That's why I was asking.
Well, they were around at least every 3 to 6 months for a while, for a few years there with me. And they would come and take eggs. I remember one morning, I think I was 14 or 15, and waking up, and I had pain in my belly button area. And when I looked down, it was full of old blood. And once I got it cleaned out, I thought, well, that's really strange. And once I got it cleaned up, I noticed that there was like a pinhole or something, but a bit bigger, right in my belly button. So I knew that, something weird had happened.
Yeah, and see, well, go ahead.
Pardon?
Oh, I was just saying, go ahead. I was going to say something, and I forgot. I didn't want to cut you off.
I remember one particular night, around 16, coming home late from a girlfriend's house who lived about 3 blocks away. And we lived up on the mountain here where I live. And at the time, there were no houses up there. I was the only house up there. And I guess it was about 10:30 at night. And, the air was quite warm and still. And all of a sudden, this huge wind came up. And this cold, musty air came down around me. And it just gave me goosebumps. I couldn't believe what was going on because there had been no wind or nothing. It was too sudden. And then something made me look up. And when I looked up, there was this huge show of, it was almost like a rainbow that had exploded. And there were all these different colored balls flying around all over. And then all of a sudden, they just joined as one and became this bright, brilliant white light. And then I thought, something's wrong here. And I tried to take off to run, and that's the last thing I remember. Next thing I remember, I'm walking up to my front door. All the lights are out, and it's a couple of hours later.
Oh, yeah. Don't you love those kind where you're sitting there going,
no.
What the hell just happened here?
I know.
Yeah, I know. I can understand that. You're kind of like, now, wait, where was I going here? Oh, now, you said something about the mountain. Now, y'all don't take this the wrong way, my friends up there in Canada, but now I know 9 contactees that live on top of mountains that's getting abducted. Is there any flat ground in Canada, guys? I'm beginning to wonder here. Well, no, I'm being serious because recently, in the last 3 years, I've met quite a few Canadians that have had these experiences. And it's just when you said the mountain thing, it just dawned on me that all of them live either on top of the mountain or at the very close to the top of the mountain. Matter of fact, several of them live on either private mountains or there wasn't anyone there when they moved in. That was just really weird when you said that. It just kind of dinged in my head.
That was many years ago, and at that time, that particular house with my family, yes, it was on a mountain. But I have to be honest with you, I've lived in cities, I've lived out in the country, I've lived in valleys. it didn't matter where I lived.
Yeah, they don't. It doesn't seem to really matter.
No.
Even if you live in D.C., it doesn't seem to really matter. They're going to pick you up regardless of where you are.
Yeah, I think where I live is the Okanagan Valley, about 4.5 hours drive from Vancouver, on the coast of BC. And basically, the Okanagan here, where I am, is kind of like, I guess, California, or the states Hawaii. It's very dry, quite warm in the winter, but we do have snow in the summer, but we do have the snow in the winter and stuff. But Kelowna, the place where I live, the town, since 2003, the UFO sightings have been absolutely unbelievable. That's when everything went nuts here, and it hasn't stopped. It's an ongoing thing.
Well, they seem to be quite a bit busier in the last few years than they were prior, or they don't really seem to care as much if people see them. Because, it was really weird after the 9/11 bombings in New York. The amount of sightings increased 100-fold. And the reason why is because everybody was looking up in the air. At least all the Americans were looking up in the air. Actually, Freddie, I talked to several people in other countries. They said they were looking up a lot more too. But a lot more people were looking up. So there was a lot more sightings. And we were trying to figure out, was this just more people were seeing, or had the activity really increased that much? And it dropped off for a little while in 2006, but it's back to where it was again now in 2008, which suggests that they're quite a bit busier than they were before, and they don't seem to mind as much about being seen, like the 2000 sighting in Washington D.C., the 50th anniversary of when they chased them in D.C. last time. And by the way, they chased the ones in 2000 with an F-16. And it's just weird, but it does seem to be that they're much more open about what they're doing. They don't really seem to care who sees them. And people ask me all the time, why don't they make themselves known? And I said, well, they have. They've made themselves known to the people they're interested in. And I hate to say this, and people write me about this all the time, but I don't think they really care about everybody else. I don't know if you come out with that same sense or not, but to me it seems like they care about the contactees and abductees that they're dealing with, and as far as everybody else on planet Earth, well, I don't think they really care. You ought to see the mail I get over this. It's ridiculous. Well, because everybody's hooked on that Billy Myers version of the aliens are here to save the planet and advance us spiritually and bring us in there. And like I tell them, if that was true, because they've been here a really long time, they would have already done it. And if they were truly here to destroy the planet, they would have already done that too. So you got to wonder, what the hell is it they really want?
Well, it's almost, sometimes I think there's two things that cross my mind with these beings. One is, are we fooling around so much with genetics and different things and cloning that they are us in our future, and we've come back trying to fix up the mess we're making?
Yeah, that's the thing.
Or two, are they, something like our scientists that go into an Amazon forest and find a new race of animal, and they shoot them, put them to sleep, they tag them, they implant them, they pull a tooth, they take some blood, and then they watch them for the rest of their lives to see how they migrate, to see what they eat. I don't know.
Well, no, because I have to agree. I've thought about both of those. A lot of people think they might be from our future. The reason I ruled out the future thing is because of the humanoid type aliens and the reptilians. Since we know they're visiting just as much as the Greys, it suggests that it's from the here and now. And knowing that all three were present 5 to 50,000 years ago suggests something much more ominous, because watching us is fine, but 50,000 years of watching us, come on. By now you have to know everything there is to know about humanity, tenfold. And so you got to kind of really wonder. And then we know that there's not just one agenda. There's 3 species, and then there seems to be sub-agendas inside the agendas. And, because we know they're running breeding programs. We know about the hybrid programs. We know about women who have seen their children on ships and stuff like that. So we're familiar with all of that. So we know that's a big part of what they're doing, but then there seems to be a lot of other stuff going on as well. So that's one of the things is when you talk about agendas, it's just sheer speculation, but
they definitely have a hybrid thing going on. I remember being on one ship. This was in my mid-30s. I had a huge UFO sighting. It was boomerang shaped. I had a friend over for tea that night. We were out in the backyard about 10:30 at night. Nothing but stars. And all of a sudden I had this rumbling in my abdomen, which I had felt before when I was young, so I knew what was coming. And this was an English gentleman with very grounded man, very scientific. You know, I never discussed UFOs with him ever. And all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, "Did you feel that?" And I said, "Sure did." And he said, "I wonder what that is." And I said, "Well, start looking up." And we both looked up, and there was a huge boomerang-shaped ship that was slowly, very quietly, no lights of any kind on it, came right up in line to where we were sitting and stopped on a dime. Now, the only reason we could see the shape of it was because it blocked out all the stars. So it was almost like a cloaked ship. And this thing was so large, it was over the size of a football field, and it was so low that I actually felt claustrophobic. And he just panicked. He just freaked. He ran inside the house and said, "We've got to go in. We've got to go in." And I said, "No way." I said, "You know, if that thing stopped there, I know it has to do with me. And I'm not remembering this as a dream. I'm going to talk to these guys. I'm going to tell them I want to see them and I want to know what's going on." And he said, "You're crazy." He said, "Get in." Anyways, he ran in, and I stood there for what I thought was 2 minutes maybe, and just looking at it, and then it was there, and then it wasn't. So it's not so much it took off very quickly, it's just it was there and then it wasn't, almost instant. And so I started walking back into the house, and he was just beside himself. And he said, "Where have you been?" And I said, "For goodness sakes, I was just outside for 2 minutes." He said, "You've got to be kidding me." He said, "I went outside. I looked for you everywhere. You've been gone for quite a while." So for me, it was 2 minutes. For him, apparently, it was longer.
Yeah, I love how they do that.
But you know, from that time on, it was like I said, all hell broke loose into our house. Things started happening with my children. You know, things were being seen in the night going into their bedrooms. My son woke up with a hole in his spine. And you know, the weird part was there wasn't an ounce of blood on his sheets or on his skin. It was like as if the hole had been done with a laser thing. And you know, you could see the inside, but there was no blood anywhere. But he was screaming in pain. Just different things like that. Just everything went crazy, and that's when I said, "That's it. I'm packing out my kids, and we're moving again." And within 2 weeks, I was here in the Okanagan.
Yeah, I know it's a shame because I know a lot of contactees who did that and did a lot of moving. And I know some of them learn faster than others, but anywhere from 5 to 25 moves before people settle down and say, "Well, this ain't making not a damn bit of difference." And, you know, well, it's like when you were saying about prayer, a gentleman had brought it up to me a few years ago that you could invoke the name of Christ and it would stop abduction. And so I'm like, well, look, dude, if that's all it takes, you know, this is like earth-shattering. I mean, if that's all it takes, it would be great. But the theory and test didn't pan out. No contactees that we know tried it, that it worked for. And everybody that did tell me that it worked for them when they were regressed, either they were being still contacted or they simply weren't contactees.
Right.
And, you know, of course, telling someone who has convinced herself that they're an abductee that they're not isn't going to work. But it's not that uncommon of a thing, actually. Probably more. We probably get more people who think they're abductees than we actually get abductees and contactees.
Right.
You know, it's a shame, but and I don't even know why anybody would want to be one.
Well, that's what I don't understand. That's what gets us all the time when my kids and I, you know, talk about this or hear stories of people saying, "Well, you know, I really wish this was happening to me." I just, you know, I don't get it.
Yeah, it's like being split. It's like having a split personality. You know, I mean, why anybody would want it is I don't know. And that's another thing. You know, like Daryl Sims, I was talking with him a few weeks ago, and he said one of the reasons he got so hostile is because he knew they were going to be abducting his kids, which, by the way, they still abduct his kid and his grandkid.
Right.
Now, he swears that he stopped it, by the way, but he won't let me regress him. I've asked him a couple of times. He refuses. He's like, and he don't want to know the truth.
I know what you're talking about. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I know what you're talking about because I'm kind of going through the same thing a little bit right now. Like I had definitely, it's medically, you know, in medical records and stuff, I had at least one pregnancy go missing overnight, very suddenly at about 3 months gestation in the past. And now my daughter is having our first grandchild, and they've already been to visit her, and things have already started happening again. So, you know, she's had lots of ultrasounds because the doctors are saying, well, this baby is bigger than it should be, and this and that is going on. And so, you know, the cycle is happening all over again. And I'll tell you, it was very tough for me when it came to my children, and I still have a tough time with it.
Oh, I can imagine.
Because I felt so helpless. There was nothing I could do to stop this. And these poor little guys would wake up with burns on their bodies and holes in their bodies, and I'm thinking, okay, do it to me, but leave my kids alone. And then my greatest fear was, well, my God, when they're going to have grandkids, are they going to be with them too? And sure enough, you know, it's already started again.
Yep. And I think that's one of the most frustrating parts of this is, you know, so many people tell me the same thing. It's just, you know, look, take me, do what you want. You already got me. Leave my damn kids alone.
Yeah.
And which it doesn't seem to matter, but you know, I know it's frustrating because, but I have had, what's that? I have had several of them tell me that it has changed the experience because a lot of them get mad and get confrontational with the aliens, and sometimes it's stuff. Sometimes it doesn't make any difference at all. Sometimes there's penalties for
Right.
getting all upset like that. So,
Yeah.
you know, we tell people when they ask us, should I get mad? Should I confront them? I said, look, it's different for each person because there's no way of telling, you know, if it's a gray, how it's going to react. If it's a reptilian, how it's going to. There's just no way of telling.
Yeah.
And we don't want to, you know, tell anybody to put their life in danger or, you know, get themselves in a position that's just going to make it worse instead of better. But then again, you know, most parents, and I'm a parent myself, feel a need they have to do something.
Yeah.
You know, and
You know, I think you know, when that boomerang shapeship came, it was after that time that things really started progressing. And I remember that night going to bed and having this dream, quote unquote. It was so vivid. I know it was real. It wasn't a dream. They made me feel as if it was a dream. But I remember being on a ship, and specifically remember being taken to this large round circular room, and there were two little grays, and then there was one that was a tall looking gray, but except had more bony structure in his head area. And telepathically, you know, I saw this huge column in the center of the room, and so I said out loud, what's in there? I know something's in there that's important. I have to know. And telepathically, he just said to me, you are not to know at this time. And I said, well, you don't know me very well. I said, I'm here, and I'm going to find out what's in there. And they started kind of taking me away. And then at that point, again, I screamed and I said, I have to know what's in there. You owe it to me. You have to tell me what's in there. And then telepathically, I was told it is the essence of man. And that has scared the daylights out of me ever since. I'm thinking, is it our sperm, our eggs, our DNA, or is he talking about our soul? Like, what is he talking about when he says the essence of man?
I know that. So you got to, you know, what the hell is that? And do we want to know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff we really don't want to know about. Now, I've seen something. I was watching the virtual auditorium while we were talking, and I seen somebody had asked a question about what type of alien are we talking about, and what do they look like?
But the ones that have dealt with us have always been the grays.
Okay.
They're about 3.5 feet tall. I would say anywhere from a light gray to a dark gray. Very big black almond-shaped eyes. Their eyes are hypnotic. I mean, it's incredible what those eyes can do. They have a slit maybe for a mouth, very small, 2 holes for a nostril, no ears, no hair at all, very thin and large pear-shaped head kind of thing. There's only one other time where we had one different being deal with us, and that was like a large praying mantis, and that was terrifying. That was really ugly and very bad.
Yeah, I can imagine, scared the living hell out of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard about the madness on a couple of occasions, mostly dealing with the reptilians, and it's kind of strange. First off, it's kind of strange that, you know, first we start studying the Greys, because that's what got me interested was the Greys. And then by doing so, you know, we found these other 2 species, and then Charles Hall informs me that there's a tall white species, which I'm not really sure about yet, but I'm still researching into that. I'm not sure what to think about it yet. At first, I was thinking, well, maybe it was a government programming, but I met some people in Vegas that suggested it's something different, and then a couple of weeks after that, I got some phone calls from some people out of Nevada that suggested it was something different. And it was really weird because within a month of the first interview I did with him, I probably had a dozen different phone calls trying to confirm what he said, including people who said they seen him in the casinos, because he had said one of the places they used to go was the casinos. And I was like, what? When he said that, I was just floored. I'm like, what? Aliens in a casino? Wait a minute, I'm going to Vegas. Oh, I don't know. You know, things like that, because, I mean, when you hear people say stuff like that, you got to kind of go, what?
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but so apparently there's some truth to that. Now, before we get any further in range here, have you had any of the MILAB experiences, the military type experiences? Or do you feel like any of the experiences might have been a military type experience? Government, maybe, for a better word?
You know, it's funny because you say that, and there's always one particular specific time that I recall when someone says military, and that was, I was taken, now this is really strange because I was in this huge underground hangar type area, and I mean, this was big. There were Hummers in there, Jeeps, you know, military people, but I also saw a couple of graves there, and I also saw a lot of people in white lab coats or something. And I remember pushing a door open and going into this one room, and I wish to God I had never, ever gone in there. They were doing experiments and genetic things, and you know, they had some containers, cages and things where they had mixed animals with human, and they had mixed grays with things, and I mean, it was like a horror show. It was just horrible. I'll never forget it. And that's the one thing that I do remember. And then in this other instance, I remember a whole bunch of us being pushed up some stairs by some military people, and it looked like Nevada, Arizona area. I don't know. It was not much vegetation, mostly sand and rocks. And it looked like an old, I don't know, maybe like a small, you know, runway, and there was a little tower, and all these people and myself were there, and they were kind of herding us like cows or something. And I said to this woman beside me, I said, my God, I said, I feel like a cow being, you know, taken somewhere. And then I looked at her and I said, wait a minute. I said, I know you. I've seen you before in a dream. She says, no, you're in my dream. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is not a dream. This is really happening. This is real, and I've seen this woman before. And to make the long story short, her and I started emailing. I did meet this woman by phone, and we started emailing. And she sent me a picture of her, and it was exactly the woman I'd seen in this dream, quote unquote. And then later on, we realized, as we talked, that we had known each other since childhood. We were taken on the same ship together. So this was really freaky to me. This was, okay, this is confirming that I've not lost my mind. This is not a dream. This really, truly happened. This is real. I know it sounds crazy.
No, actually, well, I doubt even to our listening audience, because, like I said, we do a lot of abductees on the program. And for me, it's not, because it's actually a common thing. I cannot tell you, people, this is so weird, too, because we have, you know, I was telling you about ICAR, and we have a group, and we also have an online group for contactee supporters, a support group that we keep online. And they get together and they meet. But what's funny is, when the first time these people see, they know each other. And I mean, they know each other like they've been knowing each other their whole damn life. Mm-hmm. And when they get to talk, and the memories start to come out, that's where they know each other from, is the ship. And it's really, really, really strange, but it seems to be quite a common theme or thread amongst contactees and abductees. And what's also funny, too, is I have found out, now this isn't true for all abductees and contactees, but a lot of the ones that get divorced and then end up getting remarried usually remarry someone that either works in the field or is a contactee, and they seem to, after that, they have stay together forever.
Yeah.
It's not true for everybody, but it is true for a lot of them, and it's a strange thing.
I hope to God that someday I will meet somebody who's on the same level as I am and that can understand, because I've chosen to stay alone for many, many years now, and will stay alone unless I can find someone that has either experienced what I have and still is, or at least understands, because you cannot be with somebody who hasn't experienced or who does not understand. It doesn't work.
No,
I've gone through 2 marriages and 2 divorces now.
no, that's true. That's true. And that's what it's like on with the support group we've got when it's online, because we keep it open all the time. Now, sometimes there's a bunch of people in there, sometimes there's nobody in there. But when they're in there, a lot of them get together and stay together. And a lot of them get married or become lifelong friends or partners or what have you. But for me, it's been interesting because, working in the field, I'm seeing it and dealing with so many abductees and contactees, because a lot of our cases we handle are generational cases that span 5, 6 generations that we've been investigating for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
And, so we've got to watch all of this unfold and be a part of it, which is unique because, it just confirms a lot of the stuff we already knew and a lot of the research we're working on. But being part of it and watching it and sensing it gives us an idea, too, on some things, because a lot of the contactees now are starting to prepare their kids. Instead of burying their head in the sand and playing ignorant, they're starting to prepare their kids because, by being in these support groups, they're realizing, well, this is going to happen to my kids. It's already happening. The kids already realizing something's going on here, and I don't want to lie to them. A lot of parents in the old days, 20 years ago, the parent was going to lie no matter what. Today, it seems like a lot more parents are saying, look, this is what I think is happening to me. It is probably happening to you as well. Usually with either at the moment or later on in life, the child confirms what the parents say. And it's kind of scary, and it's really irritating, but it does seem to help at least a little bit.
Definitely. See, I never decide. It wasn't like someday I decided I was going to come forward. I kept quiet about this my whole life.
I don't blame you.
But it wasn't until 2003, July 31st, when I had a very scary experience with a girlfriend, that I decided to finally, that's it. I've had enough. I'm not living in fear anymore. I'm going to make this fear work for me. And I decided to start a support group, which I did. And I ended up writing a book and put it out there because I do want to help people. And that's why I've started doing some lectures in the States and in Canada. And I'm going to keep doing it because I want to help parents who are going through the same thing that I did with these children. We must help the children. These little guys need our support and they need our help. We cannot fluff them off anymore. And we need more medical people. My greatest wish is to have physicians and specialists and lab technicians and preachers and all those people. They need to come forward and help, and counselors and stuff to help us deal with what's going on.
Yeah.
We can't hide from this anymore.
I agree. I'd love to see a lot more people from the medical profession get involved and not go crazy, because there are a couple of people and some fairly well-praised doctors before they got into ufology, but after they got into ufology, they seem to have how can I say this politely, lost their way. That's as polite as I can say it. But, now I hear all kind of stuff from people charging thousands of dollars for weekends at their ranch to see ET.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
And these were people who were launching big ideas and big projects that should have been for leaders in this.
That's
and
right.
Turned out to be, well, frankly, crackpots. And, I want to see more professionals get involved, but not if they're going to end up like them. Because that just does more damage than it does good. But it would be so nice to have, I have noticed a lot more psychologists and psychiatrists getting involved in the field, because I've realized that a lot of them have started to realize that this isn't a fantasy and this isn't sleep paralysis, and this seems to happen all day, night, afternoon, no matter where you are. But yet the person does, most of them do seem to live a fairly normal life. So they're starting to realize that there's something else going on. And then recently, there's been a few psychologists that have had experiences with their patients.
That's right.
Which has brought this in, because some of them are fairly well-known psychologists, and they were kind of like, you had a what? But it helps. It helps. So, getting doctors involved, any professionals help. It really does. But like I tell people all the time, in the end, it's the contactees that are going to make the difference.
Yeah.
We're the ones that are going to change things. We're the ones that are going to bring the information to the public and give the public the truth about what's really going on. Because you can investigate UFOs until you drop over and die. It's not going to prove anything. It's not going to change anything. and you can follow the government around and chase conspiracy theories until you die. It's not going to change anything. Really, the only people who have the information is the contactees, and each contactee, to me, is a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Each one.
I think, like, honestly, all great books have been written by a lot of UFO researchers, and look at Dr. John Mack and Bud Hopkins, and a lot of people have written really good books, and a few abductees have as well, like myself, and I think this really does help people to an extent. But honestly, between you and I and a few other people, I really believe that it will really start touching the public, all of the planet, really, once they start doing things more on a visual. If they start having movies done, like true stories of abductees and what we go through and the after effects of what's happened to us, then they're going to touch people. Yep. Because reading a book is one thing, but when you sit in front of your face, I've had 2 documentaries done on my story, and let me tell you, the volume of emails and phone calls I get after is phenomenal, and it's because people are saying, man, now I understand. Now I could see it. It's like I was there. I could feel it. I could feel your pain. I could see the pain in your eyes. They understand more. When you're reading a book, it's not the same.
No, it's not, and it does help them to understand more. But somebody asked me, 2007, we have gotten a lot more press on ufology, and some pretty good press in 2007.
Right.
And somebody asked me what was different with that year. The only thing I could think of, there was more abduction-related books put out in 2007 or hit their peak in 2007, and more abductees came forward than any year prior. That is the only thing I can find different, because the amount of UFO sightings were the same. The good ones, bad ones were still the same.
Right.
So it wasn't that. There was something else. And it's a true statement. What gets the people interested is the contactee. It's human. It's something they can relate with. They can't relate with a flying saucer, but they can relate with you, Karina. They can say, well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm having this experience. Or, I've heard one of my friends talking, and they said some stuff like this, or they've had missing time. And, and it gets them interested. Whether they think it's alien or not, it gets them interested, which, of course, makes mine and your life a little bit easier.
Yeah. See, I mean, people have to realize this isn't just something that happens one night or, every 3 years or something. I mean, the after effects of what these beings do to you on an emotional, mental, and physical level are absolutely incredible. It touches every aspect of your life. I'll give you an example. I was in my 20s, had a really heavy-duty sighting. I was taken aboard a ship. I get up in the morning. I have a sunburnt face, but it's only on half side of my face almost. It's not the full face. I have to go to work in the morning. It's in the middle of winter. What do I tell people? I'm dehydrated. I'm throwing up. I'm not feeling well. I've got this burn on my face, and they're going, what the hell happened to you? What did you do? What is this? Now, I don't ski, so it wasn't up on a mountain. It wasn't sunny. I don't suntan in suntan beds. You know what I mean? Like, it affects your job. I ended up losing work over being sick and things that were happening to me. So financially, it's been a disaster for me. You try and tell a friend, well, that's it. They spread it out to the other friend. She's gone nuts. She's gone over the edge. You lose all your friends. So you live in a very lonely place and a very painful place, physically and emotionally.
You do?
And I want people to understand that. It's not something that we wish for, believe me.
See, I'm grateful you said that, because very few abductees will touch on what we're talking about right now live in the air. Katarina Wilson did, but not many others will, because I think part of it is emotionally it's tough to talk about. And, like when we were talking about the kids, that's a tough thing to talk about. So a lot of them won't go there, and I understand why, because we are live and on the air. So I do understand that, but I'm just glad to hear you bring it up, because people need to understand that, first off, this happens a lot. It happens through your entire life, and you have to deal with not only yourself being abducted, but your spouse is knowing about it and your children being abducted. Now, that's why when somebody says, I want to be a contactee, I'm thinking, you need to go seek professional help. Regardless if you're having a good or a bad contact, the simple fact that it's part of your life is more than most humans, I think, can deal with.
Yeah, I think really, one of my greatest fears right now is this little grandson of mine that's coming, and thinking, what if something happens to me? What if I die? You know, who's going to be here to try and help my daughter and my grandson? You know, even though I can't do anything, still the thought of being here, maybe I can, you know, stop something or help some way by helping them deal with things that are going to come up. But if I'm gone, where do they go? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's very hard.
Yeah, it is. I just seen a question. Let's see, a tradie from the UK wants to know when your last encounter was.
Well, the very big encounter for me was 2003. And then in 2007, I had a couple of black helicopter things pop up after a night of something happening. And I woke up and I had this burn mark and like a cut, like a laser cut on the roof of my mouth. And behind my ear, it was painful. So I went to a walk-in clinic, and you know, she looked in there and she said, "Have you had surgery recently?" I said, "No." I said, "I just woke up like this." She said, "Well, you couldn't have. It really looks like you've had surgery." And I said, "No, I haven't." And then I said, "Oh, and by the way, I have pain behind my ear. Could you check it?" And she said, "Well, you have a large round, a circular red spot there." And she said, "You know, the only other time I have seen anything similar to this is if somebody has a very rare form of shingles." And she said, "If it is shingles, by tomorrow you'll have a rash all over your face." Well, of course, the next day there was no rash or anything. So that same morning, I was at my parents, and I asked my parents to take a picture of it, which I have pictures of. And right after that, there was a black helicopter right over their house. And then when I went to get my camera and tried to take a picture of it, of course, it flew away very quickly. But this is like blacked out windows, no insignias, no names, no nothing. It's just completely black. I have no idea who they are, where they come from, or why they're there. But that was the last time I had an experience, and that was 2007. And that's also around the time that Brian Veit contacted me and said, "Did you hear there was another UFO thing your way?" And I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "But this is what happened to me yesterday." And that's when he informed me that 2 UFOs were witnessed up above our lake, having some kind of interaction, and many eyewitnesses to it and everything. And then one of the UFOs, for some reason, went into the lake, dove into the lake, stayed under for about a minute or two, and then came right back out of the lake, went up, had another interaction with this other UFO, and then they both flew off into deep space. Now, I know what this sounds like, but that's what Brian told me. All the eyewitnesses I contacted him said.
You know, it's interesting you brought up Brian, because I heard that you were one of the reasons he came back. You know,
oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And,
oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, I actually heard that, well, for a while there, I think he got disgusted with ufology, which I don't blame him. It's hard not to sometimes, I'll be honest about it. But, and he kind of just took himself out of the picture for a little while. But I was talking with a mutual friend of his. I'm not going to mention his name on air because he'll probably shoot me. But he had told me, he said, you know, I had talked with Brian a couple weeks ago, and he said that was one of the reasons he came back. It was you, and I forgot the other lady's name.
Really?
And I'm not, you know, one of these days I'll bring him back. And he was one of my very first interviews, by the way.
Brian is a very, very kind man.
He's a lot of fun, too.
Yeah, he's very fun. He's got a good sense of humor.
Yeah, we had a blast the night he was on air. We were tearing up all kind of people. I like Brian. He reminds me of Dennis Ballphaser, because both of them will speak their mind. And I like people like that.
I've had 4 people in the last few years that really made a difference with me making it or not, to be quite honest, on an emotional level and stuff. One of them was Brian Veit. The other was Ronnie McMullen, who brought me to Denver, Colorado to do a talk for him. And he's a preacher, but I wouldn't say religious, more spiritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he really helped me, like, on that level. And then there was, of course, Graham Conway from UFO BC, who was one of my greatest friends and supporters, who recently passed away, unfortunately.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that. I've been a member of
Graham
BC
died.
for
207, yeah.
I think they were one of the first groups I ever joined.
Yeah, yeah. He was support for me in my mid-30s when things started happening, and I contacted UFO BC. He was wonderful. And then, of course, the other person was Chad Bigatini, who is a professional counselor here in Kelowna, who heard about my story through a newspaper or something when the sighting happened in 2003, and he contacted me and offered me his services free of charge for 1 year. And he was a godsend. He really was. So I was very fortunate, in the last few years to have these people in my life and help me and support me.
Well, if you ever need somebody to talk to, you always got our numbers. But we do have a group. It's called the UFO Alien Phenomena Group. We keep it on a chat server called Pal Talk. It's open 24/7. Like tonight after the program, there'll be a bunch of people in there probably talking about what we're talking about tonight. And but they're there, and just about all of them. There's, I think, a couple of thousand members of the organization, and in the chat groups and all. And they come and go. You'll have this group of regulars, that group of regulars, but they all kind of know each other. And there's a lot of new people come in, but most of them are contactees. A lot of them are contactees/researchers.
Right.
And it's just interesting to sit and listen to them talk. And it does help them. It all helps them when they have bad experiences, or they just want to get something off their chest, or they just want to vent. Because sometimes it just helps to vent. Nothing else. It just helps to vent. And it was just something we did because one of the biggest complaints I got from contactees was they couldn't talk to other contactees. They just couldn't talk to them. There was nowhere, no support, no one to help them, no one to talk to. And then I know personally it helps to talk. It just helps, and it's just one of those things if you can do it. Quick though, I know we're getting close to the top of the hour break. Why don't you tell them, give them the website address, give them the name of the book, the website address, where they can find it. They can go look while we're at break.
Okay. Well, for my book website, it's www.thecollectors.ws. Yes, S as in Sam. I know it's a strange one, but it is actually WS.
Yeah. Well, it's posted on the UFO Undercover site.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they know about the other one as well, Okanagan UFO Research.
Yeah, I think that one's posted too. There was 3 sites that I think came in the email that I posted, so they were all posted up there. So y'all can go jump on the UFO Undercover site, click on them, go check it out. Buy the book, people. Stop being tightwads. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in about 7 or 8 minutes. We're going to go take a quick break. I'm Joe Montaldo, hosting UFO Undercover. Karina Tables is with us on tonight, talking about her experiences, and we'll be back as soon as possible. So please stay tuned. And we are clear. Yeah, we've got about right about 8 out of a 50 sci-fi movie or something. But since it was real, I thought I'd put it to use.
Oh.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying UFO Undercover tonight with me, of course, your host, Joe Montaldo, and tonight's guest, Karina Sables. I've been enjoying her. She's been a wealth of information so far. We've got a lot to talk about still to come. We still have an hour to go. You do know it is the second hour, so if you want to put your hand up in the virtual auditorium to ask questions or to use the toll-free number, feel free. You can get hold to us either way. Now I know we were talking kind of about military stuff before we went to the break. And about 6 or 7 years ago, no, it was long, about 10 years ago, I kind of got interested in military stuff because of something some close contactees to me were telling me and some personal experiences I had had. And I met Melinda Leslie about 6 or 7 years ago. I don't know if you know who she is. And she really got me into the MILLAB thing because she really had a lot of information on it. And what she had and what we had with our own contactees kind of showed us that probably 1 in 100 contactees will have MILLAB experiences, military experiences. And what they're doing is, she calls it backwards engineering. Whether that's what they're doing, I don't know, but they're definitely looking for information, other things along those lines. And I'm curious, I got somebody looking up when Betty and Barney Hill were abducted. I wanted to see where you were when it was, because for me, and this is a very strange thing, but I don't agree with the current theory on Betty and Barney Hill. I think they were abducted in Canada, and the military got them in the United States. and it has a lot to do with listening to the regression tapes. But it's one of those things. So I was curious, you know, because I know you when was it, in the 60s, right? 61, 63, 60, man,
I think it was 64 for Betty and Barney Hill.
Yeah, I know it was right
19.
there. Yeah, I know it was right there in the early 60s. And I was just curious because I know you were having contacts then, whether you remember them or not, you know, because what that would have made you like.
I was born in 56.
So, that would have made you 8, huh?
Yeah.
7, 8, somewhere right around there.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of curious because, you know, when I was listening to Betty and Barney Hill, they lost a full day in Canada. They didn't even remember what hotel they stayed at, and when they talked to the guy for directions, they both gave different descriptions.
Right.
Okay, so this is classic abduction. Whole day gone, can't identify the people you're with. This is classic. But yet, when they got back to the to the United States, a lot of what she describes in that abduction is terrestrial technologies, not extraterrestrials. Very advanced for the time, but part of a lot of the technology she's described we use in everyday life today. So for me, it leans more towards a military experience than an extraterrestrial experience. Right. Not to say they might not have been an ET present. I do hear from time to time that the Greys like to be present sometimes when they take. September 61 was the Hills abductions. Thank y'all. That would have been near your first memories, huh? 5 years old? Yeah, 5 years old. That would have been near your first memories.
Yeah.
No, see, you might have been on the ship with Betty and Barney Hill.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, funny you should say that, because when these things started happening to me at 5, I was then at that time living in Montreal, Quebec. So it was on the East Coast. It wasn't here on the West Coast.
Yeah, it was on the East Coast, but
Quebec, Canada.
Yeah.
Near Montreal area.
Yeah. But we know as far as ET goes, East Coast, West Coast really don't.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
And they're in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem to make much difference there where you live. Because you know what's funny, and I don't know if you remember anything like this. It probably has happened to you, whether you remember, I don't know. But we've had like contactees from Japan, Australia, England, California. They all know each other. It's funny because a lot of them recognized each other in the chat group talking, and they were like, "Man, I know you. I've seen you before." Or they'll be on cam or have a picture posted, and they'll get to talk and realize they've had the same type of experiences, and they really get to talking, and it really freaks them out.
Oh yeah.
But it does seem to see something like that. Some things like that happening. But it's interesting for me because you do sound like you've got full blown just gray contact, which actually it sounds like typical gray contact. But it does seem like on 2 occasions when I was listening to you talk earlier, it does seem like there might be at least a hint of military in there. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I live in the United States and you live in Canada. So is this the same military that's getting the people in the U.S. and in the U.K., getting the people in Canada?
I'm not sure, but I can tell you that the last time we had 3 black helicopters buzz us in Peachland here in the Okanagan, the region when they took off was to the States, towards you, not towards here in Canada.
Yeah. Well, to me, see, I can understand Canadians being messed with by the U.S. military. I really can, unfortunately, because y'all are right next to us, you know, and we share pretty much everything, so it would make sense. But the reason I asked you is because I've got contactees in China and Russia that are having military experience, but they're describing a military that doesn't sound Chinese or Russian. Matter of fact, the Chinese guy said he didn't see any Chinese people even present.
That's interesting.
So, and I can't think it's just the U.S. government. So I have to think there's maybe another conglomerate, a group that got together. It just, you know, it doesn't seem something that the U.S. government would do itself, because if it got caught, you're talking World War III. Right. You know, I mean, the Russians, Chinese, come on, we had the Canadians nuking us. Yeah. We up there abducting their people. So if it is truly the U.S. by itself, then that means we have technologies far exceeding and far more advanced than anybody on the planet wants to know, or we've got help. And there may be more than just the U.S. involved in this. I don't know, though. You know, it's speculation at this point. Now, the last prominent experience you had, what was the most pronounced thing in it? I mean, was it the light? Well, let me let you.
The last big one that we had an hour's missing time, my friend and I, And I mean, you know, it wasn't just the sighting of a ship. We actually had 5 sets of eyeballs staring at us about 40 feet ahead of us on this road. And everything went crazy from that point on. I tried to get back in my vehicle, and it was like moving through quicksand in slow motion. I tried to yell for her to get in the car, and my voice was coming out as a mere whisper. We finally make it into the car. I tried to start the car. It wouldn't start. I mean, everything went crazy. Then we realized we had about an hour and 5 minutes missing.
If you don't mind me asking, how old was your son at the time?
My son wasn't here. He was in Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
He was in his 20s. This just happened in 2003.
Oh, okay.
To a friend and I. And, you know, I mean, from the time that we were on our way driving back home, I said to her, I said, my God, I said, I have such a pressure in my head. It feels like my head's either going to explode or implode. And she wasn't feeling good either. We were both nauseated and stuff. To make a long story short, by the next morning when we woke up, we had bruises on our bodies. We had radiation burn marks on our bodies. We had bleeding noses. We had nausea. And we had, for 3 months, this tremendous amount of hair loss and dropped about 55 pounds.
Man, that sounds like you were exposed to something.
Yeah, and, you know, we thought it was just something, maybe our imagination or whatever. And then Brian Vike started saying, oh, my God, you know, listen, I've had at least 9 eyewitnesses confirm what you saw at the area at the time of morning when all this happened to you. There were so many eyewitnesses and so much that happened within those 3 days. I believe there was 200 reports or something of things that were going on in the sky over our area. So, you know, my headaches got so bad, I actually ended up in the hospital for a week. And, you know, they didn't know what to do for me. They had me on intravenous, on painkillers, morphine for pain. I had high white blood count, so they had me on a tremendously high amount of antibiotics and so on. And, you know, eventually said, we don't know what happened, but they did do a test on the brain, and unfortunately they said that I now have brain injury, and I'm experiencing some small seizure activity in the brain now. So I'm not too happy with that. I mean, whatever they did, they really mess around with us, and I'm pretty upset about it. I still cannot remember what happened during that 1 hour's missing time.
Yeah, and I hate those where
you know, at least it wasn't like Travis Walton in 1975 where the guy went missing for 5 days.
But
you know,
the thing of it is, you've probably been missing for longer than that. It's just they bring you back. See, let me ask you this: have you ever had like abnormal hair growth, like legs, arms? I'm just curious because
we've had some strange stuff off and on. Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because we've pretty much proven that at least some contactees, they will take for anywhere from a week to several months. And we found out, well, there was one guy, he was getting ready to go to bed, and I think it was his son's birthday party. And they took a picture of him that day. He had no beard, clean shaven. Okay? Got up the next morning with a full beard. Now, a full beard for a man is a month. Some guys 2 months to grow. Okay? That's not something that's going to grow overnight. And we've had several women who have gotten up with like a month's growth of hair in their legs, and it just freaks them out. And some of them, you can find stuff when you regress them. Some of them you can't. I'm not sure why, but a lot of times when you regress them, they'll have 30 days worth of memories. But as far as anybody's concerned, they weren't even gone from their damn house.
Well, I've had the opposite, where my children or people that were over have said that I went missing through the night. They came into my room to talk to me, and I was gone. And as far as I'm concerned, I was just asleep all night.
Yeah, and I've heard those many times too. One lady was telling me about an experience she had, and her husband says, "Well, I was sitting there talking to her. He said I went in the kitchen to get a cup of coffee, walked back in my living room, no wife." And he said this was about 6 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Well, you know, about midnight, he heard a noise in the kitchen. She's sitting there looking for him. Where are you?" As far as she was concerned, they were still just had the conversation. And he's like, "No, baby, that was 6 hours ago." And she's like, "No, that was 6 minutes ago."
Yeah.
You know, and I can understand how for abductees that is just extremely confusing, because well, that's 6 hours out of your life or an hour out of your life, and what happened during that hour?
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there any recollection of what was going on in that hour? And a lot of it has to do with how do you feel at the moment. Like on that experience you were just talking about, when you realized, something had happened. I mean, how did you feel physically and mentally? Was it a drained feeling? Was it an exhilarating feeling? Or
Angry, extreme fear, possibly all the negative aspects of emotions that you can imagine. Just terrified. At one point, the fear almost paralyzed me for a whole year on that last experience. So it definitely wasn't pleasant. And the fact that they've left me with a physical and medical ailments, I am very ticked off.
Yeah.
I really see these things are really good at making people forget what they go through and inserting screen memories and so on, so on. For instance, years ago, I remember going out stargazing with some friends and some children, and all of a sudden we all felt really tired and fell asleep. Got back in the cars and fell asleep. 2 hours later, wake up, and some have bleeding noses. One had a bleeding ear. One was throwing up. I mean, it was just a really strange night. As we go to leave this area, so it's about midnight or so, we go to leave the area, and all of a sudden I screamed and I said, "Oh my God, look on the side of the road." And on this huge boulder, there was standing a 3.5-foot tall gray. I mean, like I'm seeing everything I'm looking at right now in my room. And two of the people in the car said, "Oh my God, it's one of those things." And the other one looked and said, "Oh, don't be silly. That's just an owl. It's a gray owl, and just happens to be a very big one." Okay, so one was not seeing what we were seeing. The others were seeing something else. On that same road on a different night, again, 4 different people in the car. This time, all 4 saw the same thing. And, the one person, screeched, come to a halt. And the one person screamed, "Oh my God, I didn't know that owls got that big or that they could lay down like that on the road." It was laying across the road. And then somebody else in the back said, "Owls don't lay down like that.
Yeah.
Don't be stupid. What are you talking about?" So I think screen memories can be put in, or sometimes children can't handle what's going on. So my daughter at 6 years old woke up and said, "The little white ghost came in to see me again, Mommy. But the pumpkin head man was there, and he said he was the doctor, and I don't like him. He's very scary." And then proceeded to draw me a picture. So in her little mind, she couldn't handle what this being was. She drew him with a pumpkin head and a very thin, long body. So, I think the brain can only take so much.
And it's definitely different for each individual too.
Yeah. The worst thing about this, and I don't know if you've heard this from abductees before, is that we are terrified and, of the next encounter or whatever, but sometimes we are pulled to go out at night and do stargazing. It's like a moth being drawn to a flame.
Oh, no, I've heard that. We've got cases documented where people get up in the middle of the night. We've had a couple drive as far as 300 miles to get abducted.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of wonder about that. You're like, but then these days we do have a lot of contactees that have come to some, maybe terms isn't the right phrase, but some of them have established, for lack of a better term, working relationships. And it has changed the style of contact they have. Not to say that they still don't from time to time do some nasty stuff to them. I'm not even going to tell you that's not true. But there seems to be a lot less of it. And they seem to be a lot more willing to let the contactee retain their memories, and at least some of their memories, and retain some of what they're doing for them as well. It's really strange. And I know it has a lot to do with, first off, how you dealt with this your entire life and what kind of support you had during your life. Because I notice contactees, long-term married contactees with 2 or 3 children, a lot of them turn into keepers in their 40s and 50s year ages. And those are definitely people who are working with the aliens, dealing with the hybrids and stuff like that, and dealing with a lot of the contactees being brought on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But they've come to some kind of terms. And then there's people like Suzanne Hansen and Katarina Wilson and Jim Sparks who feel the need to get out there and broadcast this, which is a group you might actually end up fitting into. And if this, sometimes what starts out as something, a necessity, turns into a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so you may end up in that group as well. I'm not sure, but I don't even know if you want to, but you may end up in that group as well. But there does seem to be different layers, different styles, and different objectives for each contactee. And and then, of course, contactees with children seem to hold a much bigger fascination to the aliens. I guess because, well, we got mom, we know what dad is. Well, come on, we got the kids too. Now we can really see what we did. And then, of course, they can know from there where they want to go with the children and the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, and so on and so forth. It really is irritating when you think, I can really deal with personal contact. Just the kid thing just puts me over the edge every time.
Well, I as a child, it began early for me, but I have to tell you, I was 8 years old when my mother suddenly died within about a month and a half or so. They're not sure, but she was a healthy, vibrant young woman, had just turned 30 years old, and overnight kind of thing, this woman withered and died. Now, what happened is that they lived in Montreal in Canada at the time, and my parents decided to go to Florida for a small holiday, and it was their first night there, went to bed. It was quite warm, so they just slept with a sheet over themselves, and when my father woke up in the morning, he was facing my mother's back, and she was covered in what looked like circular radiation burns all over her back, about the size of a loonie. So it looked like a basically suction cup mark from like an octopus had been at her back. And when he touched her, she was just burning. So he said, okay, look, you're really sick. We got to get home. Came back home. She was put in the hospital and died. I think it was about a month and a half later or something. Within 3 months, she was gone for sure. And, to this day, they can't tell us what happened. Well, to me, I don't care what anybody says. I think something really strange happened that night, and I think it had something to do with them.
Yeah, something went awry and no telling.
Yeah.
No telling. It's really strange, too, because in the 60s and 70s, and even in the late 50s, the contact was, different than it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, maybe that's when E.T. decided to start doing some of its more hardcore experiments. Because we've noticed over the years, especially since about 95, that missing time, which there still is for a lot of contactees, seems to be something that is fading out, and gain timed or lack of time or coming back early seems to be something. And I think ET, what they do is they adjust to us, the contactees and the researchers. When they start realizing, well, wait a minute, these guys have figured this out. We got to change.
What is your thoughts on cattle mutilations?
Oh, I get in trouble for cattle mutilations, okay? Because when I first got involved with cattle mutilations, I thought, okay, it has to be aliens. It can't be anything else but aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started talking to some farmers and ranchers, and then I realized that there's no cattle mutilations east of the Mississippi River. None. At all. And the cattle mutilations in the United States are primarily in the west of the United States, located near areas where the government was doing nuclear testing. Another weird coincidence is almost all the parts removed from the cows are parts where radiation would accumulate the fastest and at the most.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So then I got to thinking, I said, well, I know we had field lasers in the 60s. I knew that we had those. And and I know we got vacuum pumps, so we got the means to take the blood out, and we got the ways to make the incisions, bloodless incisions. So I'm thinking, and then this was the kicker for me. Almost 85% of ranchers that are interviewed, when you ask them, did you see or hear anything, black helicopter comes up, not UFO. Only I think in less than 10% of the cases do they talk about seeing UFOs.
Well, the reason why I asked is because we've had a few cattle mutilations up here in Canada in the last couple of years. Well, actually, since 2003, it started up again. So I was just wondering if you felt there was a connection.
Well, I don't know. I would check in it at first. See, if I was living in any cattle mutilations, I would check for, like, if they got any waste facilities nearby or any type of plants nearby, or I would check into those first, because there's something about cattle mutilations that just, well, I look at it from a different point of view, because aliens, if they really wanted to do this, they could zip down over a couple of pastures and grab as many cows as they want, take them with them, do whatever they want, and then dispose of them. Why would they put them back? Now, I'll tell you another little secret. Almost all the ranchers, well, everyone we've ever spoke to, their cattle was insured. So when they found the cattle, the insurance company paid. And I found that just too coincidental to be anything other than, oh, wait a minute now. Aliens aren't going to really give a blank, blank, blank if you collect on your cow. But the government might, because if by collecting on your cow, more people will be willing to tolerate it.
Yeah.
And that for me was just too coincidental to be anything other. But I still don't ever rule out the aliens 100%, because you just never know what the hell they're doing.
Right.
But I would also check to see, you know, who had the cows. Was it a small farmer, or was it a big ranch? And because they have found some people who have hoaxed cattle mutilation to collect insurance.
What I think, you know, another thing that I'm sorry, I'm kind of switching subjects.
Take it. Go wherever you want.
I think one of the things that I've been really trying to find is to maybe get in touch with some abductees, and you know, you hear the usual stories. This and this happens. We get this kind of happening. They do this to us. They do that to us. But there's been a couple of things that have happened throughout my life with myself that I've never heard another abductee talk about. And I'm hoping that I'm going to meet someone else who's had similar experience, because, you know, I don't want to think, hey, wait a minute, maybe, you know, I have some kind of mental illness or something, but I had eyewitnesses for these things when they did happen, but I've just never heard of anyone else talking about them. And I'm wondering, like, when you discuss things with abductees, have you ever heard anything that happened to them that is very unusual?
Yes, see, this is what's strange about abductions and contacts. Let's say me and you are talking, and Katarina Wilson and Jim Sparks, we'll use some famous ones so everybody knows who they are. We're all four sitting here talking, okay? And the base of y'all's experiences are the same. The fear factor, the chill, the aggravation, all of it is the same. But the actual experience tends to vary. That's why I say each one is their own piece of the puzzle, because the experience tends to vary from contactee to contactee. There are a few that are almost identical, but there's always parts that are different. And sometimes the parts are really either outrageous or just too hard to grasp or understand. And now, we don't know if this is a real experience, a planted experience, or an outright lie. There's just no way of knowing. And then there's a couple of things you have to remember when you're a contactee. We can only perceive things in the way we were raised and in our own realities. That's the only way we can perceive them.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's already a tainted view there, okay? Say 20, 25% there is already tainted. Then we have to deal with our environment, television, stuff like that. Then, so you got to add about another 25 or 30% to that. So, and this is true for all contactees and abductees, at least half of their experience is not what they think it is. At least half. In most cases, it's more like 75 or 80%. Because when you get into some really deep regression, you find much different things there. And it has a lot to do with the way the contactee puts it into their reality. A good contactee will take a bad experience, or any experience for that matter, and put it into a reality that they can understand, or at least deal with. Maybe not understand, but deal with. Now, you know, with you, I wouldn't even know what to tell you, because until we had talked, like, probably 20, 30 hours.
I didn't have television for years, because I'm not a TV watcher.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't watch
children
either.
weren't brought up with it. We had never read a book on aliens. We had never seen an alien movie. So it was just
I mean, we don't tell people that not to do it like MUFON does, because really and truly, the core of the experience is what we're looking for. Okay, so once we know you have that, then we know you're a contactee. So it really doesn't matter. And most of us are smart enough to be able to pick out things that ring true to, like, you know, Close Encounters or one of the more other sci-fi movies that's out of Star Wars. Because it's weird, because you will hear people you'll be listening and you're going, you know what, that sounds like a scene out of Star Wars. You don't want to tell a contactee that, but it does. And so you know that those things do get tainted, and it's unfortunate, but it's the human mind, and it's if we had support for this full out, like for all other problems, you wouldn't have that because people would instantly go talk to somebody about it. So the experience would be told at the moment and recorded at the moment, pure. But in most cases, that's not what happens. The people bury it, and then they bring it up, and then they bury it, and they bring it up, and by that time, it becomes quite tainted. And you know, and it's hard. So you have to look in there. So you look for the core experience, okay, which is the gray contact experience and some of the experiments. That's a core experience. Then you look for what the aliens may be doing with the person, or why they're abducting this person, or what's going on. Because we know the abductions happen because of family lines. Either your mother or father was a contactee or an abducted. Whether they do it or not, one of them was. And probably back, 200 or 300 or 2,000 or 3,000 years. It may go back as far as 6,000. Current theory is the Greys started intervening 6,000 years ago, which means, they're looking for family lines from that point forward. Mm-hmm. So whether or not that's true, we don't know. That's sheer speculation, but it does seem that we know at least 10 generations for true. There's a couple of diaries you can find. You can go back and see experiments 10 generations. So to about the 1700s maybe. After that, it's sheer speculation. You can only go by what you see in the ancient history text, which there does seem to be a lot of it. There's even some classic abduction in the ancient world. I mean, classic, missing time, missing days.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's like, look at those 15th century paintings that have UFOs painted. I mean, come on.
Well, I got in trouble one time because we were talking about abduction, and somebody said, well, give me an example of an abductee and religion. Now, this is a very controversial thing. I said, well, there was this woman who went missing in the desert for quite a good period of time and came back, and guess what? She was pregnant, but she was still a virgin. I said, you know what? I said, that's classic abduction. I mean, classic. This is something right out of somebody's abduction book, but we're talking about the Virgin Mary, and doing so, people just lose their minds. But it's not the only reference. There's literally hundreds of them in ancient world that you can look at, and it's an interpretation. And let's be honest, Karina, if we lived 2,000 years ago and the aliens landed on the planet and started doing all kind of crazy stuff, we would think they were gods. We wouldn't even know what else to think they were but gods. Or demons, depending on the way they act. But 2,000 years later, we're a little better educated. We understand a little bit more. And we know that there's spirituality. Well, most of us know that there's spirituality and there's religion, which are two separate things.
Even nowadays, I mean, depending on who you talk to or where they're coming from, some people call them aliens. Some people call them fallen angels, and others call them demons. It depends. I mean, are you a religious person, or where were you brought up, or what country are you from? They all look at it differently.
But I was glad to hear you earlier say about spirituality. You said the preacher was more spiritual than religious, and most people cannot define the difference between being spiritual and being religious. They think it's the same damn thing. Yeah, and it is.
Yeah, I was brought up Catholic, and when my mother died, my father completely stopped going to church, and so on and so on. To make the long story short, what I am is not religious. I'm a very spiritual person. I've had a near-death experience, and believe me, my connection is very strong to God, to the universe, to whatever a person wants to call it. For me, it's a very strong connection.
How old were you again when your mother passed away?
I was 8 years old.
8? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we were talking about, the Betty. Okay. I'm just getting something straight in my own head. Well, no, it was strange because my daddy passed when I was 16. And I was actually raised Catholic myself and haven't been back in a Catholic church since. I'm not even going to lie about it. But, that's a long story anyway, but still, I haven't been back since. And well, I do, it's interesting because I find these kind of similarities amongst contactees. It's a real strange thing, but there's a lot of little subtle things. I'll tell you one other thing, and this is true for every contactee I've ever met. Actually, there's two things that I can honestly say about every contactee. One, they're all empathic. Some of them are telepathic, some of them have better abilities than that, but all of them are empathic, meaning they can either sense or send emotions. Totally. And just listening to you tonight, I already know you're empathic, so I ain't going to worry about it.
I'm very intuitive, but I have been since childhood. It just got stronger after my near death.
It's natural in contactees, so it's a natural ability. All of them have it. The other thing they have is they're all born survivors. All of them.
Oh, totally.
They will survive. You throw them in the middle of the damn desert with a with a toothpick. I don't know what it is, but they are. That kind of worries me, though, Karina. I got to say, Karina, that really worries me because knowing that all contactees are naturally born survivors makes me suggest that, wait a minute. Why do they need survivors? What the hell is going to happen here? Somebody please tell me. I get a little nervous when I hear things like that. But we really don't know. That's the problem. Good question here. Is there a reason why the guest has not had alien encounters since the publication of her last book?
There are a few things that seem to match up with a few abductees. I was told that I have something extra or something different about my spinal fluid and something to do with DNA or something or other. I never did understand it. There's just a few little points, like different blood types, a rare blood type, or like you said, seem to be survivors. I mean, no matter what came in my life, what happened, I was determined I was never going to give up. Believe me, there was a time when I actually contemplated or thought of suicide when things were happening to my children, but never, of course, did go through with it. But nevertheless, the thoughts were there. But I've just always had this thing in me that I'm an optimistic person, I'm a positive person, and I'll be damned if I'm quitting now.
I agree with you.
They're not going to get me.
But that's what you find. I mean, contactees get down. They're just like everybody else. They do get down, but for somehow or another, they always manage to pull themselves up, and they always manage to survive. Now, some of them do it better than others, but still, it's there. And a couple other things. Now, this is more true for some of the younger contactees these days, but they all seem to be very multitaskable. Their minds seem to be able to grasp a lot of ideas at one time. They seem to be able to hold conversations on a lot of different ranges. A lot of them seem to, and even older ones even seem to possess a lot more knowledge than they should, which we think is part of these downloads that go on, or even part of what goes on in the abductions. But they just tend to see. So, somebody told me the other day, he said, well, there's a lot of benefits to being abducted. I said, yeah, there's some. I said, but man, come on. I said, all they have to do is ask, okay, really. Yeah. If they would just ask, because most contactees tell me they can sense when they're coming. I mean, is that true for you? Can you sense when they're coming? You start getting like...
Absolutely. My children and I will get this very high sound that goes through our ears, and we'll just look at each other, and we'll know. Yep,
and that's the thing, and a lot of contactees can sense it. So it's tough, and all I say all the time, because to me, actions speak louder than words. It doesn't matter if you have a good experience or a bad. The simple fact is they did not ask you. They took you without your permission. So regardless what their agenda is, they're evil SOBs to me, because if they had my interest at heart, they would have simply asked, Joe, let me take you on board the ship. These experiments are going to be rough, but trust me, it's for the future or whatever. They don't have to tell me why it's for. If they would just ask, because they're going to do it anyway, I would just feel better if they asked. And at least I would feel better about the children being abducted. I was like, well, I can say no, but they're not going to really listen. But at least they asked. And it's just one of them things that bugs me. But to me, that speaks volumes about them. They have to think that much less of us if they take us without permission.
Well, I don't think first of all, they don't have any respect for us, or they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But, they have no emotions. They're like these little robots that just come and do their job, do what they have to do, and then take off. They don't care how it affects us on physically or on an emotional or mental level. They just don't care. They come and do what they want, take what they want, collect all kinds of things from us, and then take off and just leave us there. Well, you know what? It can't happen anymore, especially with our kids. That's why I'm so determined that I don't care how much people make fun of me, what they think of me. As long as I'm alive, I will keep going out there, and I will keep doing my lectures, and I will keep talking to everyone who wants to listen, so that I can help them deal with what's going on, help them to understand what some of their children are going through. Don't tell them, oh, you're having a stupid nightmare, or let's put you on Ritalin, or let's do this, let's do that. That's
Prozac
not what's
or
happening.
something.
Oh, yeah.
Put you on something where you don't feel nothing at all anymore.
Exactly.
I'm glad to hear you're out there actually talking to people, offering to help with contactees, because there's not enough of, and like I said earlier tonight, these are the people who are going to make the difference. Is to contact these. Yes, I will ask y'all questions. I see them. All right, 2 of them here right quick. Was anybody in your family, dad, mother, anybody in the military? Anybody?
My father was in the military when he was a young man. Other than that, none of my exes were in the military. However, I have lived with the children, and I have lived in towns where, in one town in particular, I was only a block and a half from the military base.
And somebody asked, let's see, is there a reason why the guest has not had an encounter since the publication of her book?
Has not what?
Okay, hold on, let me read this again. Is there a reason why the guest has not had an experience since the publication of your book? That's not true, is it? You've had experience.
It's strange. They would assume that. As a matter of fact, a lot has been going on, as I told you.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I guess they missed part of the conversation here.
You know, and not just that, but my daughter is 32 weeks pregnant.
Oh, Lord.
And I hate to say this, but
tell her I said congrats.
Pardon?
So tell us that congratulations.
Oh, thank you. But you know, we've had our share of stuff already.
Oh yeah.
A few weeks ago, my daughter stayed the night here and overnight, and I woke up in the middle of the night. It was 3:15, something like that, and went to go to the washroom, and then I thought, well, what's all that noise in her bedroom? And the door was shut. And I thought, that's funny. Why is she up this time of night? And what is she doing? So I thought, okay, when I come out, I'll just go to the room. And I came out, went to go towards her room, and I found myself walking into my bedroom and getting into bed. And all the time in my mind, I'm going, wait a minute, I have to go and open that door. I have to go in that room. I need to go see Nicole. And there was no way. I was out like a light. Now, in the morning, she came into my room and woke me up, and she was crying.
Yeah,
and she said, Mom, I'm spotting. And I said, oh, sweetheart. I said, it's okay. Sometimes these things happen. And then she cried some more, and she said, no, you don't understand. They came last night, and they took the baby out, did something to it, and then put it back in. And it was after that that they did the first ultrasound, because they said that the baby just seemed way too big, like too far advanced for the weeks that she was. So we don't know if the child has been had something done to it or what's going on. We have no idea. And then 2 weeks after that, she lost what she thought was a huge, well, it was about the size of a baseball, round blood clot looking thing, but no blood. So she went to the hospital right away, and they found no blood. Baby was still there. They don't know what it was or what could have happened. So there's been strange things with her already, you know.
Yeah, and actually, I hate to say it, but that's common. I've heard that if you're an abductee and you get, well, I should say if you're a female abductee and you get pregnant, they're going to come visit you, and they're going to probably come visit you more than one time. And it's not the first time I've heard them messing with the baby. So, you know, it's one of them things you got to think about. What the hell are they doing first off? Because I hear about them messing with babies, but the babies always look normal, you know, when they're born, and a lot of times they are bigger and healthier. There was a woman just recently, I think she was like almost 11 pounds. Mm-hmm. That's a big baby. I mean, my son was almost 10, and he was huge. I mean, 11 got to be, I don't even think about it. I'm glad I'm not a woman.
Well, my first one was born 5 weeks preemie, and there was a lot of things. They came around a lot with that pregnancy. And I even lost, they thought I had a twin. There's no twins on either side of the family. But they felt I'd lost a twin. And I was in the hospital for most of that pregnancy. And then he was born 5 weeks preemie. But you should see him now. He's close to 7 feet. He's 450 pounds. He's massive.
Big old sucker. Yeah, it's weird. And, you know, I've heard about them being born preemie, too. There's a couple of them I know personally that have been born as preemies, and now they're healthy, good. It's strange. I don't know what they're doing. I wish we could figure out exactly what it is they're doing, but the mothers always are in too much distress to get any real information. And you can't blame them, but, you know, we're trying to find the facts, but that you can't really find them because basically what you get whether it's hypnosis or if it's recall on their own, is the fear there and the anger is so much that it kind of blots out everything else. And which you can't blame them. I mean, they're taking the baby, and seeing it like that is it's got to be horrifying for a mother. It just has to be. I don't
feeling in the world.
Yeah, I just don't see what else it could be. And see that, and then people understand why contactees get mad about that. Well, that's why. Things like that's enough to tick anybody off.
I think you understand what I'm going to say, because you said something similar to how I feel earlier. Is this whole phenomenon, this whole thing, it's like a giant puzzle, and each and every one of us holds a piece of that puzzle. And if we do come forward and work together with abductees, with researchers, with physicians, and so on, we will finally have the whole picture. But we need to do it together.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
And
that's the thing. And well, it's one of the reasons we formed ICAR. It's one of the reasons the radio show was originally formed. It's one of the reasons I formed the station itself. Because we bring on a lot of contact these days, and we get them to talk, whether they're famous or not.
Thank God for people like you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, most people are scared. Ufology itself is scared of the contactee. You don't know how mad I get when I'll see like half the conferences I don't see any contactees speaking.
Right.
And then the other half I'll see like one, and I'm thinking, guys, these are the people who know what the hell's going on. I mean, y'all are talking to the wrong people, but they're not going to listen to me on that because, but I know the public's interested. So
totally.
So I don't understand why, well, I'll tell you why, because it's a good old boys club and they don't like letting new people in. That's the truth of the matter. And, and that's a problem in itself, because now ufology's fighting itself, because contactees are coming. No matter what they do, the contactees are coming. They're coming out now in numbers. You're starting to see a lot of these accounts being publicized, and these books are selling good. I mean, I'm not making people millionaires, but if you've got if you've got 50 contactees out there and they're selling anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 books each, a lot of people are getting to know this, and a lot of them now have them in the libraries. You can go loan them and look at them, and so it's changing, and more people are getting interested in the contactees than they are in any other aspect of this, but. Ufology doesn't want to hear it because, really there's only a couple of big names in abductions, and our organization has passed most of them up so far that it's not even funny. And, so there's us, and there's David Jacobs. Bud Hopkins really isn't that big of a player anymore.
Right. Well, there's Whitley Strieber, there's all kinds of people out there that have had experience.
Yeah, that's had experience.
The Wiener brothers, the Allagash incident. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, I actually did some investigation work on the Allagash case.
So there's a lot of people out there. It's not just one here and there.
That's the thing. There's a lot of them now, and there's a lot of them that are willing to get out and talk. And I'll tell you something we've been doing lately. For the last 2 years, we have been bringing contactees together. We just recently did, we were doing a show with Jim Sparks and Suzanne Hansen, but for some reason we had trouble getting the line connected in New Zealand, but that's rescheduled for another time. We've had, like Yvonne Smith on with Preston and with, what's his name, Jacobs? I can't think of his name, but.
David Jacobs?
No, not David Jacobs. This is another contact. Yeah, for some reason I can't, his name's just eluding me right now, but. We've done this. I mean, we've had lots and lots of contactees on the program, but we've now started bringing them on together. So not only are they telling the audience, but they're getting to meet each other, talk.
That's great.
And what we're doing is we're slowly but surely forming Craig Jaycox. Thank you very much, Tom. But we're starting to form basically a little group of, now it's kind of getting to be a big group of contactees. Right. They all know each other. So what's happening now is when they're speaking at different places, they're mentioning them. So now people are getting interested, and they're like, well, I just heard Katarina Wilson speak, and she was saying such and such about this one or such and such about that one. So they're going to look them up, and it's starting to change.
You know what I think they need to do, though? Like just exactly what you're talking about, what you're saying is all these huge UFO conferences and stuff that they're having in the States, why don't they have all these abductees? Somebody bring all these abductees together and then ask them to come to one of these conferences, and they get to talk, not just the UFO researchers and stuff. Who better to get answers from than the people that are having the experiences?
I agree. You're preaching to the choir here.
Wow. I don't understand.
I don't either, and I have talked to I've talked to every mainstream ufologist there is, and the thing of it is very few of them want to hear this contactee word, and I understand why, because if they start putting them in the conferences, people are going to get interested in them and not in what everybody else is doing, and it's a way of keeping their work ahead, keeping it up, like Disclosure or Roswell, which please, I'm tired of hearing about Roswell, and then we'll hear about it again.
I'm so tired of Roswell, I can't even begin to tell you.
Not to pick on my friends in Roswell. I got a lot of friends down here.
No, I understand, and it's a very important factor.
It is, but for me, I mean, come on. Now, if you'd started this yesterday, okay, that's cool, Roswell. But, when you've been doing this as long as we have, Roswell just old. I don't want to hear about it. Unless something new comes up, I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Well, it is a piece of the puzzle, and it is important. Please, I'm not trying to down it at all by any stretch, but I mean, we do need to hear about the other people and all the stuff that's going on now. And I think, like we said, if you're experiencing something and then you've got the others working with you, but you all work together, that's when you get all the pieces, that's when you get all the information.
Yep.
You can't just go, only them and only us, and it doesn't work that way.
Oh, we catch a lot of flack for doing this kind of research, but we decided MUFON wasn't cutting it. Nobody else was really doing it, so we started doing it, and to our surprise, people got interested in it. A lot of people got interested. And, at first it was like 20 of us and 50 of us and 500 of us, and I think at last count we're probably up around 4,000, maybe 5,000 members. I'd actually have to go do a physical count, but that's twice the size of MUFON. And I hate to say it, but probably 50 to 70% of them are contactees.
Right.
They're joining the organization because they know that's what we're doing, and they know they can come hear the show or come by the support group or come hang out or come listen to other contactees such as yourself and contact them or write to them. And it's just a place where contactees actually can say what the hell they feel like saying. Right. You heard what I told you, like when I told you earlier, and I just interject whenever you feel like, and it doesn't matter where the conversation goes. You're the contactee, and that's what we're wanting to hear.
Somebody asked me one day, they said, "What are your credentials?" And I said, "My name is Karina Sables, AWMC, abducted without my consent."
That's it. That's your damn credentials, too. And but it's a hard fight. It is getting better. I'm not going to lie. It's getting better, and it's not as hard as it used to be. But
well, I'm getting older, so I'm at the point where I don't care what people say.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, too.
I'm just going to get the word out, and I'm going to try and help as many people as I can.
I have a contract company down here, and the other day I was talking with a customer, and he said something. He said, "I heard you've got a radio network." I said, "Yeah." He said, "What is it?" I said, "It's called the UFO Paranormal." UFO Paranormal? He's looking at me. I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "No, I'm into that stuff big time." He said, "Okay, as long as the price ain't going to change, I don't care what you do." But he did it. It took him back. He was kind of like, "Okay, you're one of them strange weirdo guys." I'm thinking, all right, whatever, dude. But it is something. We still got to deal with it, but it doesn't seem to be as bad. And you don't seem to get as ridiculed as much. But, I work for myself, so that makes it a little bit easier. If somebody don't like what I'm doing, they can just hire somebody else, or I can tell them to take a flying one. So that does make it a little easier on me. But I know a lot of contactees now that have come forward that are working and living in the community and not being harassed and not being hated on and not being abused. But there are still occasions where somebody has to say, "Oh, that's crazy."
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's times I go by and I hear the whispering behind me, or, the last time, not long ago when the last documentary came out, I actually had people come up to me, and this time, a lot of them was more on the positive side. They were actually very curious and said, "You're that lady and that, oh my." She says, "Well, now I really understand what you must go through, and, can I ask you some questions?" So I think things, like you said, are changing slowly. People are being a little bit more accepting.
I agree. I think it's going to be better. Ooh, oh God, we're just about out of time. Again, give them your information so they know where to find you, how to get in touch with you, where to find the book, all of that wonderful stuff.
Well, they can either go through Trafford Publishing, or they can go through my book website, which is www.thecollectors.ws. Or I can be reached on my other website. I'll make it short because it's a long one. Just go Okanagan UFO Research, and it should come up for them.
Well, I want to tell you thanks for being on. I had a great time. You're a great guest. I know we barely even touched. one of the first things when we do the first interviews, we rarely ever get to even near what we want to talk about.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed talking with you. And
I'm going to get Linda to get you rescheduled.
Pardon?
I said I'm going to get Linda to get you rescheduled for some time in the future. That way.
Sounds wonderful.
Well, that way we can get more stuff on. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, Karina's stuff on her website will be, I think it stays up till Thursday now on our website. So y'all can go there. If you forget the links, they'll be on the bottom of the page. Just go click them, right underneath her picture and the guest name, and just click away. And like I said earlier, buy a book and don't be a cheapskate. You got to get on these people, Karina. You got to.
I've never been one to push anyone. So, but if there are parents out there who are going through things with their children, good suggestion. Please pick up the book because it will help you to understand and maybe to deal with some things a little bit easier when it comes to the children.
And I agree. And I was glad to hear you touch on those subjects tonight too, because like I said before, most contactees are kind of leery about getting into too emotional of the stuff because it can get kind of rough doing an interview. But I'm not really hostile to the subject. That's matter of fact, one of the very first contactees I ever interviewed, they said, "Wait a minute, you know about this? Are you a radio show host or a contactee?" Yes, I'm both. They're like, "Oh, okay, that makes some sense now." But anyway, Karina, I want to tell you again, thanks for being on. You were fantastic tonight.
Oh, thank you, and I look forward to talking to you again.
And I look forward to talking to you again too as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank everyone for tuning in to UFO Undercover tonight. I see next week's guest is going to be Peter Robbins. Peter, I was only hating on Roswell a little bit, so don't hit me on the head or nothing. he's helping putting Roswell together this year.
Oh, dear.
But just in case you're listening, Peter. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for tuning in tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. And until next week, enjoy your life. And we are clear.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I had a great time. It was an evening.
Prepare yourself for an evening filled with paranormal, special guests, interviews, haunting stories, creatures of the unknown, and tales that will chill you to the bone. Brought to you by the UPRN Network and Pittsburgh Paranormal Society. Take a walk into the night with Sean Kelly.
Good evening. This is welcome to Into the Night with Sean Kelly, and I just want to, say a little thing before I introduce my guest. I've been talking about mental illness every time before I start my show, and I just want to rehash it and to say that with my problem, I'm doing okay. The medication is working. Doctor gave me a good bill.